From the Great Wall to the Great Firewall, China has always been a nation with a strategic vision. But now, fueled by cutting-edge technology, China's 100-year marathon has taken on a new dimension. Join me as we explore how China is using technology to shape the world and redefine global power dynamics.
Expansion.
Thank you.
This story is a more refined deep dive of the semiconductor war facing Taiwan and how it applies to the 100-year marathon. If the information in this video is too long, I recommend checking out our shortened version of the story for someone who doesn't have the time to hear most of the details and intricacies.
戒嚴咁啦，係咯，即係你預咗你行出嚟就會俾佢搜你嘢啊，睇你袋啊。
Altered Tibetan Buddhism, killed countless monks, attacked countless monasteries, and pushed endless propaganda.
The photos, almost 3,000 of them, show the reality of how whole swathes of Uyghur society have been swept up person by person. The oldest was 73 at the time of her detention, the youngest just 15.
China, a dictatorship led by the infamous Xi Jinping. This country has been a popular topic for years as Taiwan is in China's limelight. But why does China want Taiwan so much? And why would the US go to war for Taiwan? To understand this, we must recognize that this is all part of a larger plan. For years, China hid a dirty plan under its sleeve, a century-long notion to plunge the United States into recession without ever firing a single bullet. Sound familiar? This is China's 100-year marathon.
Where is the Panchen Lama?
So, why does China want Taiwan?
The growth of Taiwan semiconductor manufacturing.
Taiwan is an autonomous democratic island in East Asia and is part of the South China Sea. Taiwan has its own government, military, currency, and operates as a separate entity from the People's Republic of China. However, the People's Republic of China claims Taiwan as part of its territory and is not refrained from using force to control Taiwan. This means they will shoot, bomb, or even start war with Taiwan in order to keep the Taiwanese in check. The international community is divided on the issue, with some countries recognizing China's sovereignty over Taiwan and others having unofficial ties with the Taiwanese government, such as the United States. You might be wondering, who is the People's Republic of China, and why do they care so much about Taiwan? The People's Republic of China, or PRC, is a socialist state in East Asia. It was founded on October 1, 1949, after the victory of the Communist Party of China, or CPC, in the Chinese Civil War. The PRC encompasses a vast territory that includes the majority of China's population, stretching from the Himalayas in the west to the East China Sea in the east. It is the most populous country in the world and has the largest economy by nominal GDP. Now before you ask, is the CPC the same as the CCP? In short, yes. Founded in 1921, the CPC is the only legal political party in the People's Republic of China. The CCP wields great influence over all aspects of Chinese life, including their government, military, media, and education. It also plays an important role in shaping the domestic and foreign policy. China has a multi-party democratic system, with the Communist Party of China controlling the government and military. Although the country is governed by a system of central planning and state management, it has implemented market-oriented reforms in recent decades, resulting in significant economic growth and development. It is a member of several international organizations and plays an important role in world affairs. Despite China's economic and political power, it faces many challenges, including environmental degradation, income inequality, and human rights issues. What are Marxist-Leninist principles? Marxist-Leninist principles are a political ideology based on the writings of Karl Marx and Vladimir Lenin. They advocate a classless society in which the means of production are owned and controlled by the state or community as a whole, and wealth and resources are shared equally among citizens. This ideology also supports the use of revolutionary violence, if necessary, to overthrow the existing political system and establish a socialist state. One could speculate that China created the 100-year marathon shortly after the end of the Chinese Civil War. But is it because of this said war? There are no facts to support this thesis, but with that being said, let's look at the facts we do know that could support this idea. The Chinese Civil War was a conflict between the Communist Party of China and the Kuomintang led by Chiang Kai-shek from 1927 to 1949. Now, back to the main question. Why is China so desperate for Taiwan? China views Taiwan as a rogue state that must be forcibly reintegrated with the mainland if necessary. This is rooted in China's own notions of sovereignty and territorial integrity, and the belief that the Chinese nation should be united under one government.
Did you know that China has a law that mandates an attack on Taiwan if it seeks independence? It is called the Anti-Secession Law. It was passed in the year 2005. It legalizes the Chinese invasion of Taiwan. The law specifically talks about the status of Taiwan. It says if plans for a peaceful reunification fail, Beijing can and should launch a military operation. It says if the possibilities for a peaceful reunification are completely exhausted, the state shall employ non-peaceful means and other necessary measures to protect China's sovereignty and territorial integrity. The State Council and the Central Military Commission shall decide on and execute the non-peaceful means and shall promptly report to the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress.
The People's Republic of China also sees Taiwan as an important element of its national identity and a symbol of its rise to being a world power. Taiwan functions as an independent country in many respects. Its lack of formal recognition by the international community and its unresolved status with China have made the question of whether Taiwan is a country complicated and controversial. Because of this, China has tried to pressure other countries not to recognize Taiwan as an independent country and to limit Taiwan's international engagement and influence. While there are concerns about China's military and political influence over Taiwan, some might argue that Taiwan is not oppressed in the traditional sense. Why would the United States go to war for Taiwan?
The US is Taiwan's biggest arms supplier, has close economic ties with the island, and is likely to defend it.
We are going to hold China accountable.
The United States has provided diplomatic and military aid to Taiwan since the end of the Chinese Civil War in 1949, when the nationalists known as the Kuomintang fled to Taiwan and established a government. The United States continued to recognize the Kuomintang as China's legitimate government until 1979, when it established diplomatic relations with the PRC. Despite this change in official recognition, the United States maintains unofficial ties with Taiwan and continues to provide military and other assistance. Taiwan has never officially declared independence from China. So, why was the 100-year marathon created? When the People's Republic of China was founded in 1949, the concept of a 100-year marathon did not exist. The term 100-year marathon came into popularity in the early 2010s, decades after the founding of the PRC. The idea behind the 100-year marathon is China's strategic plan to surpass the United States to become the world superpower by 2049, the 100th anniversary of the PRC's founding. This concept encompasses various aspects of the national development such as economic, military, technological, and cultural progress. This reflects China's long-term goal of establishing itself as a global superpower, and has become a much-discussed topic in both academic and political circles in recent years. The likelihood of conflict and the outbreak of war if China were to invade Taiwan will depend on many factors, including the reaction of other countries, particularly the United States and its allies, and the military strength of both sides, as well as Taiwan's self-defense capabilities. A war in China is likely to have serious adverse effects on the Chinese economy. However, the magnitude of the impact will depend on many factors, including the length and scale of the conflict and the country's ability to mitigate its economic impact through policy measures. Which is why the 100-year marathon was created. What exactly is the 100-year marathon, though? To even begin to understand, we have to understand the concept of wu-wei. With a quick Google search, you can find the definition of what wu-wei is. the practice of taking no action that is not in accord with the natural course of the universe. But to take this idea further, Wu Wei is a Taoist philosophy concept related to the idea of non-action or non-interference. It means letting things happen naturally, without controlling or manipulating the outcome. The goal is to cultivate a state of harmony and balance in one's life, moving with the flow of life rather than resisting or fighting it. Thus, Wu Wei is a form of inner peace and contentment that comes from accepting life as it is and letting it unfold naturally. Have you ever heard of the story of how the US beat Great Britain without ever firing a single shot? This was called the Eclipse of Britain. The Eclipse of Britain refers to the period after World War II when the British Empire lost its power and influence. During this time, the British economy weakened and other countries, particularly the United States and the Soviet Union, rose to become the world's dominating superpowers. This period marked the end of Britain's status as the dominant world power and the beginning of its transformation into a more modest country politically and economically. The United States beat Britain without firing a shot in the sense that it overtook Britain as the dominant world power after World War II through a combination of economic and political means. The United States came out of the war with a strong and growing economy, and Great Britain suffered severely. In addition, the United States has developed nuclear weapons, giving it a significant military advantage over Britain and other nations. In terms of political influence, the United States became the leader of the Western world and played a major role in shaping the post-war international order through organizations such as the United Nations and NATO. Meanwhile, Britain's global power and influence has waned as it focuses on rebuilding its economy and adapting to its new role in the world. Overall, US domination of Britain was the result of a combination of economic, military, and political influence rather than outright military rivalry. This is the 100-year marathon. The decline has been a marathon in the sense that it spreads gradually over a long period of time. Similarly, the 100-year marathon is a reference to China's gradual rise to global power throughout the 20th century. In both cases, change was the result of complex, ongoing factors and events. The origin of the term 100-year marathon can be traced back to Michael Pillsbury's 2015 book, The 100-Year Marathon: China's Secret Strategy to Replace America as a Global Superpower. The assumption that China is seeking to overtake the United States as the dominant power, rather than simply building its own economic wealth, is based on a number of factors, including historical precedents. Throughout history, emerging nations have often sought to challenge the dominant powers of the time. Some observers believe China is following a similar pattern, expanding military power. China has increased its military power in recent years, and some believe it has more aggressive intentions beyond its borders. Economic competition. The rapid growth of China's economy has led to increased competition from the United States and other countries, raising concerns about China's ultimate intentions.
The product is pegged to the US dollar. Russia and China are hoping to change that. They want to trade in their own currencies, the yuan and the ruble.
Global influence. China is actively seeking to expand its global power through strategies like the Belt and Road Initiative. Some believe China has a growing diplomatic presence and has broader cross-border ambitions. It is important to note that there is ongoing debate among experts about the rationale for China's actions and the potential consequences of its rise. Some argue that China is merely pursuing its own national interests and that its actions should be viewed in that context, while others believe there are more sinister motives behind its actions. Today, we're going to be looking further into what these things are and how they relate to the idea of the 100-year plan. So get cozy and grab a snack, because there is tons of information to go over. You may be asking at this point, Techspansion, this has nothing to do with technology. Why are you talking about this? You couldn't be more wrong. China's technology sector has grown rapidly in recent years and is now considered one of the strongest in the world. In some areas, such as e-commerce, mobile payments, and delivery services, Chinese tech companies have outpaced their US counterparts and are among the largest and most innovative companies in the world. However, it is important to note that the US technology sector is still very strong, with a long history of innovation and leadership in many areas, such as semiconductors, software, and internet services. The United States continues to be home to many of the world's leading technology companies and remains a hub for innovation and entrepreneurship. Comparing the US and Chinese tech sectors is complex and depends on the specific sector or subsector in question. China has implemented various policies and strategies to manage and regulate its technology sector. Some of the most important initiatives are promoting domestic innovation. China has invested heavily in research and development to promote domestic innovation and reduce its dependence on foreign technology. Restrictions on foreign investment. The Chinese government has restricted foreign investment in certain areas of the technology sector in order to protect national security and promote domestic competition. Promoting domestic standards. China is promoting its own technical standards, such as 5G and AI, to reduce its dependence on foreign technologies and increase its international competitiveness. Cybersecurity regulations. The Chinese government has enacted strict cybersecurity regulations to protect critical infrastructure and personal data, and to combat cyber threats. Dual-use technology controls. China has introduced regulations to control the export of dual-use technologies, or technologies that have both civil and military applications, so that they are not used for malicious purposes. There have been allegations of state-sponsored Chinese hacking and espionage operations targeting the United States and other countries. However, the exact scope and nature of this activity is difficult to ascertain and is often the subject of debate and speculation. The Chinese government has consistently denied any involvement in hacking or espionage activities. Allegations of hacking and cyber espionage by the Chinese government or its state-sponsored actors are not directly related to the 100-year marathon concept. However, some experts argue that such activities can be seen as a way for China to gather information and technology to help advance its strategic interests and achieve its long-term goals. Taiwan is a key part of China's strategic considerations in this marathon, as reunification with the mainland is seen as an important step in achieving its long-term goals. However, Taiwan is also a formidable obstacle to China's plans. Taiwan operates as an independent democracy, and the government is adamantly opposed to being subsumed by China. On top of all of this, there's another big factor aiding Taiwan. Taiwan has the monopoly on the production of semiconductors, but how? Microchips are important components of a wide range of electronic products, such as smartphones, computers, and automobiles. TSMC, or Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, is the world's largest independent semiconductor foundry. Headquartered in Hsinchu Science Park, Taipei, Taiwan, TSMC has account management and engineering services offices in China, Europe, India, Japan, North America, and South Korea. Additional support and services are provided by Value Chain Alliance, or VCA partners, a major player in the global semiconductor industry. TSMC's dominance in this industry is due to several factors. Manufacturing expertise. TSMC has a long history of innovation in semiconductor manufacturing and has invested heavily into research and development to maintain its leadership position in the industry. Cutting-edge technology. TSMC is at the forefront of technological advancements in the semiconductor industry and a leading provider of advanced manufacturing processes and production technologies. Strong customer relationships. TSMC has strong customer relationships, and many of the world's leading technology companies rely on TSMC for their semiconductor needs. Financial resources. TSMC has the financial resources to invest in cutting-edge manufacturing equipment and technology. China is trying to build its own semiconductor industry by both investing in domestic companies and acquiring foreign companies. However, it still faces major technical and logistical challenges to match the expertise and efficiency of Taiwan's semiconductor industry. That is why China relies heavily on Taiwanese microchips. In terms of revenue, the semiconductor industry contributes significantly to the Chinese economy. The industry is valued at over $200 billion and is expected to continue growing in the coming years as demand for electronic products continues to grow. However, China's reliance on semiconductor imports presents it with many challenges, including supply chain vulnerabilities. China's reliance on foreign semiconductors leaves it vulnerable to trade disruptions and geopolitical tensions. Competitiveness. China's reliance on imported semiconductors makes it difficult to build a domestic technology industry that can compete with the world's major technology companies. Security concerns. The use of imported semiconductors in critical infrastructure and military applications raises security concerns, as the chips can be used for cyber attacks and espionage. In summary, semiconductors are essential to China's economic growth and competitiveness, and the country's efforts to build a domestic semiconductor industry have expanded to achieve technology self-sufficiency and reduce reliance on imports. It is not correct to say that the US has completely cut off China from semiconductors. However, the US government has taken a number of steps in recent years to restrict Chinese companies, including semiconductor companies, from accessing US technology and equipment. These actions are part of a broader effort to address concerns about China's technology policies and practices, including intellectual property theft, forced technology transfers, and security risks posed by Chinese technology companies.
Taiwan's Coast Guard issuing a warning to a Chinese Navy vessel.
You are seriously harming regional peace, stability, and security. Please, immediately turn around and leave.
On Sunday, Taiwan's defense ministry says it spotted 11 Chinese ships and 70 military aircraft.
There have been several incidents in recent years in which China has been accused of spying on other governments and organizations. Some of the most notable cases are Operation Aurora. In 2009, Google announced that it had been targeted in a sophisticated cyber attack in China. The attack was later linked to the Chinese government and seen as part of a broader effort by the Chinese government to gather intelligence on a number of foreign organizations. Operation Snowman. In 2014, the U.S. Department of Justice indicted 5 Chinese military officers for hacking into computers of U.S. companies and stealing classified trade secrets. The case was seen as part of a larger effort by the Chinese government to gather intelligence on U.S. companies and gain an edge in trade negotiations. Huawei. Chinese telecommunications giant Huawei has been accused of using its technology to collect information on behalf of the Chinese government. The U.S. government has banned the use of Huawei technology in the U.S., citing security concerns. TikTok. Launched in 2016 by ByteDance, TikTok is a Chinese social media app accused of collecting data and possibly sharing it with the Chinese government. The U.S. government has expressed concern about this app and has taken action to ban its use in the U.S. It's not clear what the Chinese government does with the information it collects about these companies, but experts say the data could be used for a variety of purposes, including intelligence gathering, industrial espionage, and political influence operations. More recently, as of February 3, 2023, China has flown a surveillance balloon in U.S. airspace under the claim that it is a civilian aircraft, which is mainly a manned aircraft, besides the event of such cases as drones. China claimed that this is a weather balloon that flew off course. This follows shortly after China lifted their COVID restrictions after 2 years of extensive quarantine.
Night after the White House revealed just this afternoon that an F-22 fighter jet shot down another object flying over Alaska. The debris landed on a frozen body of water, so the Pentagon is working to recover the object.
The author of the book referenced in this video, The 100-Year Marathon, China's Secret Strategy to Replace America as the Global Superpower, Michael Pillsbury, commented on the situation.
First, I want to get your thoughts on the enormity of this spy flight, and then discuss a bit about how they're trying to change the conversation now.
Well, the largest lens to look at this through is the Chinese nuclear buildup. We used to think, and the Pentagon would repeat this every year, that China had about 200, maybe 300 at most, nuclear warheads. They were not invited to arms control talks. The problem was always the Soviet Union trying to surpass us. Now, the Pentagon has announced, and I agree with it, that China is going for at least 1,500 nuclear warheads, almost all of which have the United States within range. So worst case, what this balloon is doing, and this happened during the Cold War with both us and the Soviets, the balloon is capturing information about how our ICBM warning system works. That's why they're in Montana near a Minuteman field. If you're really close and you have a high quality camera and tape recording machines inside this device, you can do extremely useful nuclear targeting information.
I find the proposed approach by the Biden administration concerning. Negotiating with China over the return of the balloon and sensor package could potentially grant them an undeserved advantage. The notion of placing guardrails in the relationship between the two nations to prevent any further escalation is concerning. It is imperative that we take a firm stance against China's growing power and influence. Allowing them to gain ground, whether through negotiation or otherwise, is unacceptable and does not serve in the best interests of our nation.
China's military says that it is ready to fight after completing 3 days of large-scale combat exercise around Taiwan. The exercises follow the Taiwanese president's trip to the U.S. last week.
And now, in an exclusive interview, Taiwan's foreign minister tells CNN's chief national security correspondent Jim Shooter that China is, quote, trying to get ready to launch a war against Taiwan.
Enter BITs. What are they? A bilateral investment treaty, or BIT, is an international agreement that establishes terms and conditions for private investment by nationals and companies of one country to another country. BITs typically include provisions such as fair and equitable treatment, protection against expropriation, free transfer of funds, and dispute settlement mechanisms. The purpose of the BIT is to provide a stable and predictable legal framework for foreign investment and facilitate foreign investment flows between the two countries. Some experts argue that China's use of bilateral investment treaties is part of this broader strategy to overcome the United States as a global superpower. This allows China to secure investment opportunities and resources in other countries, thus helping to build economic and political relationships that benefit its own country. But that's only just the start. As of recently, geopolitical conflicts have been heating up all across China's border. In recent years, fighting has erupted along the border with India. However, instead of bullets and warheads, sticks and clubs have been known to be used. The India-China border dispute refers to the ongoing territorial dispute and military confrontation along the border between India and China. The dispute stems from disagreements over the demarcation of the two countries' shared borders in the Himalayas, with each side accusing the other of violating a de facto border known as the de facto line of control. The India-China border dispute, while not specifically mentioned in the 100-year marathon, reflects China's growing assertiveness in pursuing its own interests, including territorial expansion and regional control, which is part of the long-term strategy discussed in the book. However, it's important to note that this is an interpretation and the situation is complex and involves multiple factors.
The Belt and Road Initiative.
The Belt and Road Initiative is a massive infrastructure and investment project launched by the Chinese government in 2013. It aims to connect countries in Asia, Europe, and Africa through a network of roads, railways, ports, and other infrastructure, with the goal of promoting economic development and trade between participating countries. The BRI has the potential to greatly benefit participating countries by improving connectivity and access to markets. However, it has also been criticized for a number of reasons, including concerns over the terms of financing, the lack of transparency in the project, and the potential for participating countries to become economically dependent on China. In terms of the 100-year marathon, the BRI can be seen as a key component of China's efforts to increase its global influence and expand its reach into other countries. By investing in infrastructure and trade, China is positioning itself as a key player in the global economy and establishing itself as a major power in the region and beyond. The BRI is therefore a complex and controversial project with both potential benefits and risks, and its implications for participating countries should be carefully considered and evaluated. In the context of the 100-year marathon, China-North Korea relations are seen as part of China's overall strategy to maintain its influence in the region and balance the presence of the United States and its allies. North Korea's economic and military support allows China to exert influence over the regime and limit its dependence on other countries, especially the United States. In addition, this aid allows China to maintain a buffer zone between itself and U.S. ally South Korea, which could help deter U.S. military action in the region. Note, however, that China's relationship with North Korea is shaped by a complex interplay of historical, political, and economic factors, and is not driven solely by the idea of the 100-year marathon. Moreover, China has been long suspicious of the U.S. military presence in the region, and sees relations with North Korea as a way to balance this power relationship. In conclusion, while the 100-year marathon provides a useful framework for understanding China's long-term goals, its relationship with North Korea is shaped by a complex interplay of multiple factors. China has territorial disputes with several Southeast Asian nations over control of islands and waters in the South China Sea. China has come under international criticism for its treatment of Tibet and its suppression of Tibetan culture and religion. The India-based Tibetan government in exile has advocated greater autonomy for Tibet, while China claims that Tibet has been an integral part of China for centuries. However, the Dalai Lama, spiritual leader of the Tibetan Buddhism and political leader of Tibet, is in exile. The current Dalai Lama, Tenzin Gyatso, was born in 1935 and has been a Tibetan spiritual leader since the 1950s. The Panchen Lama and the Dalai Lama are two important figures in Tibetan Buddhism. The Panchen Lama is the second highest figure in the Gelugpa tradition of Tibetan Buddhism, which is also known as the Yellow Hat sect. The Panchen Lama is considered to be a reincarnation of Amitabha Buddha and is responsible for teaching and spreading the Buddhist teachings. The Dalai Lama is the highest figure in Tibetan Buddhism and is responsible for both spiritual and political leadership of the Tibetan people. The two positions have a complex relationship and are often in conflict, particularly when it comes to issues related to the Chinese government's control over Tibet. The current Panchen Lama is widely regarded as a figure appointed by the Chinese government and is not recognized by the Dalai Lama and the Tibetan government in exile. The current Dalai Lama, meanwhile, is based in India and is recognized as the legitimate spiritual leader of the Tibetan people by many in the international community. In 1995, the Panchen Lama was kidnapped by the Chinese government when he was 6 years old and has since gone missing.
The United States now wants to corner China, and it has a two-pronged strategy. The first handle is Tibet. America is focusing on Tibet again and asking a question. Where is the Panchen Lama?
His abduction and subsequent disappearance were widely condemned by human rights groups and the international community, which called for his release and return to his family. The Chinese government claims he is leading a normal life and is under state protection, but this has not been independently confirmed, and the Panchen Lama's whereabouts are unknown. This autonomous region is a region in western China populated primarily by the Uyghurs, a Muslim minority. The Chinese government faces international criticism and allegations of human rights violations over its treatment of the region's minority ethnic Uyghurs. China's response to the Hong Kong protests has heightened tensions with the Western countries who have accused it of violating the autonomy promised to Hong Kong under the one country, two systems policy. China is also becoming increasingly assertive in Hong Kong for many reasons, including concerns over political stability. The Chinese government is concerned about Hong Kong's potential political instability, especially given the city's recent pro-democracy protests. National security. The Chinese government considers national security a top priority and is concerned about possible foreign interference in Hong Kong. Maintaining control. The Chinese government seeks to maintain control over Hong Kong and keep it integrated into the mainland's political and economic system. China is pursuing a major military modernization program, including developing new weapons systems and expanding naval capabilities. In the context of the 100-year marathon, China's actions in Hong Kong can be seen as part of a broader strategy to maintain domestic stability and control, and exert influence around the world. Geopolitical conflicts in which China is embroiled can affect China's ability to establish itself as a world power and affect its relations with other countries. Conflicts in the South China Sea and Taiwan, for example, could heighten tensions with other countries in the region and impede China's ability to establish itself as a regional leader. Moreover, China's response to conflicts in Tibet and Hong Kong could affect its reputation on the world stage and its relations with other countries, including Western countries that have criticized China's human rights record. So, how does the US feel about this? Is there any plan to stop China? As for China's 100-year marathon, the US government, media, and the general public have differing views on the issue, making it difficult to pinpoint a unified US view. However, some US officials and analysts have expressed concern over China's growing assertiveness and geopolitical ambitions, citing the 100-year marathon as evidence of these trends. In response, the United States has taken a number of steps to counter what it perceives as China's challenge to the international order and US interests. These included imposing tariffs and other trade restrictions on Chinese goods, restricting technology transfers to China, and investing in military power to counter China's military expansion in the Pacific. In recent years, US-China relations have become increasingly strained over issues related to trade, human rights, and geopolitical influence, particularly in the Asia-Pacific region. In this regard, the 100-year marathon has become a concern for some in the United States, who see it as evidence of China's long-term ambitions to oust the United States as the dominant world power. Nice, that's great and all, but what does this all mean for you? Geopolitical and regional tensions could rise if China completes reunification of Taiwan. Taiwan is an autonomous democracy, and the possibility of joining the People's Republic of China is highly controversial. Many countries, including the United States, have pledged to support Taiwan's independence and oppose any attempt to force Taiwan to reintegrate with the mainland China. The outcome of such scenarios is likely to depend on the actions of various international factors, and could lead to military conflicts, economic sanctions, and major shifts in the global balance of power. It's difficult to predict exactly what would happen if China re-annexed Taiwan, but access to Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, or TSMC, could be jeopardized. Without TSMC, the US could completely lose advanced microprocessors for computers and mobile devices, graphics processors for gaming and high-performance computing, network processors for data centers and network equipment, and high-end chips for self-driving cars, autonomous vehicles, and artificial intelligence. Losing TSMC does not necessarily mean losing these products entirely, because there may be alternative suppliers. If China were to take control of Taiwan or restricts foreign access to TSMC, perhaps it would be as part of a broader economic strategy aimed at boosting China's own technological prowess and limiting the competitiveness of foreign firms. In addition, China may seek to integrate Taiwan's economy more closely with its own economy, limiting the autonomy of Taiwanese companies. China could also take military action to secure its sovereignty over Taiwan, which could lead to conflict with other countries such as the United States, which has pledged to support Taiwan's independence. Even if China had access to a big company like TSMC, controlling a single chipmaker would not automatically give China a dominant position in the global tech industry, or even the rest of the world. TSMC is just one part of the global technology supply chain, and there are many other factors that affect the competitiveness of technology companies and the development of technology. In summary, if Taiwan can be re-annexed without significant opposition from the United States and other countries, China may seek to expand its political influence. In recent years, China's political influence has expanded both within its own borders and globally, and Taiwan's successful reunification can be seen as a demonstration of its growing power and legitimacy. Such actions could heighten geopolitical tensions and lead to more confrontational relations with the international community, including the United States and other countries that have pledged to support Taiwan's independence. Well, who cares if TSMC and Taiwan go down? If we can make another production chain like TSMC but better, then none of that should matter, right? Wrong. The military clash between two great powers like China and the United States would have disastrous consequences for both countries and the world at large. Such conflicts can result in significant loss of life and property, as well as economic and political turmoil on a global scale. Meanwhile, the United States has a strong interest in promoting stability and peace in the Asia-Pacific region and is committed to supporting Taiwan's independence. Defending Taiwan against possible aggression by China could be seen as necessary to sustain this engagement and prevent regional destabilization.
The Chinese army showed this short video of simulated attacks on Taiwan, with missiles fired from land, sea, and air into the island's territory. Chinese officials said fighter planes loaded with live ammunition had carried out multiple waves of simulated strikes on important targets.
It is critical that decision-makers consider all these factors and engage in constructive dialogue with China to resolve differences and promote peace and stability in the region. The failure of the United States to defend Taiwan in the event of a possible invasion by China could have serious consequences for Taiwan's reputation and standing in the international community. Many countries around the world view the United States as a leader and a champion of freedom and democracy, and failure to defend Taiwan in the face of possible aggression could be seen as a betrayal of these values. From China's point of view against the United States, the inability to defend Taiwan is a sign of weakness and can be seen as an opportunity for China to assert its supremacy in the region. So does that mean that war with China is inevitable? It's important to keep in mind that finding a solution to a complex and contentious dispute like China's is likely to be a long and difficult process. Improving relations with China will likely require both sides to make concessions and take steps to address each other's concerns. While there are no easy or guaranteed solutions, continued dialogue and cooperation on shared interests can help improve relationships over time. So where does that leave us today? In summary, China's geopolitical landscape is complex and constantly evolving. From territorial disputes in the South China Sea, to tensions with Taiwan, to human rights issues, there are many challenges other countries face in their relations with China. But it is important to remember that diplomacy, cooperation, and dialogue are still the best tools for resolving conflicts and maintaining stability. Through cooperation and a comprehensive and strategic approach, the international community can prevent escalation of tensions and promote peace and stability in the region.
中美两国都是大国，都负有重要的责任，要为世界的和平。
How can you protect yourself and your wealth? All in all, actions like the Belt and Road Initiative and de-dollarization impacts normal Americans like you greatly. With the collapse of big banks like Silicon Valley, which we will talk about in another video, times of economic uncertainty like now make investors and normal people worry. China and Russia buying up all the gold in the world for the Belt and Road Initiative to succeed creates an issue, as it would create a more stable currency if the yuan and ruble are backed by gold. When fiat currencies are backed by commodities like gold and silver, they are limited to the gold and silver value equivalent. When they take their currency off the gold standard, like what Richard Nixon did, that allows banks like the Federal Reserve to print as much money as they see fit. Richard Nixon claimed that gold was essentially holding the US dollar back, but gold was saving it. A final blow to the US dollar would be if oil were traded in something other than the US dollar, which is looking more and more likely as China created a deal to broker peace between Iran and Iraq, two countries known for high tensions, and would not make peace with the United States. Now they have a common goal. If all oil was traded off of other currencies, this would make living extremely difficult. Driving to work would be a lot less likely to be seen, and this would also drive up prices for goods exponentially, as that cost would translate to imports and more. China taking Taiwan would create an unstable market for anything you possibly own that uses technology, as most of all tech contains semiconductors. Control over TSMC would mean your newest phone would be your last phone. BRICS has one goal, that is to destroy the US dominance and create a new path, making this an uncertain time for America. One last piece to note is that we are at the same point in rate hikes as we were back in 2008, when our last big market crash happened. Banks are also crumbling. Meanwhile, housing markets and car loan markets are also tanking tremendously. Realize, the dollar will not become 25 cents. That's not how a dollar weakens or gets stronger. How it works is through your buying power. When 2 weeks of food for 2 people was worth $20 and is now worth $90, that's a weakened US dollar, which is how your buying power becomes less. Remember, this is not financial advice, but I think a portfolio would be best fit to check both ends of the market. Having a safe haven asset like gold and silver, or even copper, or something like Bitcoin, which is considered an inflation hedge, is ideal in case the US dollar collapses. Another thing you can do is buy other currencies with your US dollars while it's still strong, such as stocks or currency in China, India, Japan, etc. On the flip side, in case the dollar does strengthen, positions in the stock market, rental properties, small businesses, or any type of passive income will generate you better money if you have it. And it's good to get it when things are low because people are scared and pulling away. What's the worst that can happen? You buy the dip while everyone is panicked. If it doesn't collapse, you now have a better, stronger investment to profit off of. If the US dollar does actually collapse, then you don't need to hold on to the money anyways. The best investment is one that makes you money back. Known as passive income, these can come in many ways in many currencies. But as times get uncertain and bank runs become more frequent, are you going to invest into other places to retain your wealth and income? Or are you going to tuck your dollars under your pillow and hope it gets stronger? Thank you for visiting. Stay tuned for insightful analysis and discussion on geopolitical issues. If you like this new series and want to see more, please leave a like, comment, share, subscribe, etc. It all helps. Thank you. This story was written and guided by ChatGPT and independently fact-checked.
Taxpansion.